The Journey of Styles by Damien, Renwick. The underground city of Uluru. As the crystal swallowed the darkness encompassing the walls, Styles could hear a low, buzzing rim. He looked for his reflection in shapes. In the purple reflection, which didn't seem to make sense, the pair of them looked animal. "I am a kangaroo," he said, looking at himself. The image now perfect. He was a ruddy, brown kangaroo with a large, blonde tint. "Don't get ahead of yourself." Styles looked at Nip-Nip, and as he did, he smiled, only to see Nip-Nip also change before him. "I declare, I see clear when I close my eyes. I see past your face. I see past your disguise. I see past your thoughts and into your mind." Nip-Nip traced the floor with his leg, which was now covered in hair. "I feel strange," Styles said. The smell of them had changed, and another smell was on the draft. The scent he could not place gave him a sick feeling. "Is this what a level up looks like?" he said, transfixed in his kangaroo self-image. Dashes of light were pulsating horizontally within the wall. From his face towards Nip-Nip and further into the cave. He reached out with both hands to touch the light, and as he did, the light flickered, then dissolved. Nip-Nip was making him feel stranger by the second, and the lowly cave was beginning to feel like somewhere he had been before. Shimmering to the right, and keeping his hands on the walls, he traced the smoothness until it gave way to an opening, a metal of some type wedged in between the blocks which it appeared to be made from. Further across the wall, a pink archway could be seen. He looked back briefly, then wandered towards the archway. Nip-Nip turned as if to follow, and as he did, a light came from the floor around him. He shrieked, and Styles turned to see the full black and golden kangaroo stood there. A hairy Blackfoot came up and boosh, hitting Styles in the face. Looking at Nip-Nip, his mind squinted. Memories of Nip-Nip changed. Nip-Nip had become his alter human form, Pin-Pin. He shouted, "Confather!" He had not seen for a long time. As he did, a second blow came from the riled kangaroo. He fell backwards, scraping the walls with panic and fear as he fell back into the darkness. The glints of purple evening out until he stopped falling altogether. When he hit the ground, he expected it to hurt, but the ground was soft, even though the ground was solid. He felt his skull where he had been kicked. Pain hit him. A stinging pain shot through his ribs. He only had mild moments of clarity. He felt from the floor some type of vibration. He was in the subterranean room. He could not see a way back up. There was a square light coming from a block in the ceiling. He stood directly under it. Then strange lights came from the walls, which were vastly larger and polygon-shaped from top to bottom. One column, as tall as 20 men, lay broken, no longer shining. Its inside crackled, reflected silvers and purples. He looked up to where the column had once stood. Sure enough, 20 breaths of men up the column space was a light where he must have fell from. No lights were shining up there anymore. He could not see the kangaroo, or Nip Nip, or Pin Pin for that matter. He was not sure how such an enormous crystal had fallen. Nevertheless, there it was. As he looked up one last time for Nip Nip, he knew he would probably need a miracle to be found, unless he found a way down to him. He last saw the dark smoke in the kangaroo, a trap maybe, something that reveals enveloping him. He didn't look like he could move. The smoke and the lights were one thing. His face, which was that of Pin Pin, was something entirely different. His mind raced as to how Nip Nip could in fact be Pin Pin, the Priest King, and his ancestor. The smoke was in the image of Nip Nip. The man who stood there was Pin Pin. In all logical thought, the man must be Pin Pin. The thoughts being of Nip Nip and the buzzing of Pin Pin. The spiritual breath against the low buzzing over and over. How could his Khan father's true form be that of someone from long ago, before his birth? The question made his head search for answers. He called out with his mind, and then his voice. He received no reply from either channels. Styles turned around, peeking the glowing hum from the wall across from him. It wasn't moving like the rest of the walls. He walked towards it steadily. He smiled crazily to himself at the looniness of what he was doing. He didn't think he would see Nip Nip again. With each step, the chances ebbed away. Not just physically, but with all that the dreaming had predicted would happen. The nagging smell in his nostrils of Nip Nip faded. The intensity of the light heightened the closer he came to the wall. The purple of the crystals within the walls were faded so that he could not see the corridor in front of him. A doorway within the wall, he thought to himself. He looked back to the column again. Still, no sign of Nip Nip or the kangaroo. He took another 3 steps, 4 steps, 5. He kept counting for safety's sake. Clear across the corridor, he reached the opposing wall's most luminous point and found another illusion. Always a light spanning horizontally down the walls from his head height further in to the construct. He wasn't sure, but he was sure this place worked with his mind. The corridor curved slowly, cautiously, to step only where the light honored the walls of purple sapphire. Construct gave him a much-needed confidence. He had never been a stranger to the darkness, but this was different. As a matter of fact, it was downright bizarre. It was neither dark nor light, just green and purple. Everything shone from within itself, the light never really glaring beyond the walls. The floor began to descend. The thought from Nip-Nip returned tenfold. Sharp pains up the side of his head throbbed like a crystal piercing his right temple. The lights got brighter. The corridor straightened. He felt for his head, and as he did, he became dizzy. He continued to walk, almost blinded by the lights all around him. The pain of not seeing Nip-Nip again told him to move faster than he would ever in a place as sacred as this. As he began to leap faster and faster down the tunnel, the light magnified, as did the intensity of the pain. With all his distraught and intent, he echoed out for Nip-Nip. He thought out to his aforementioned teacher, sadly to no reply. With that, the lights dimmed. The distance and the darkness had not been reached. The darkness around Styles began to reach its limits, and as it did, he saw something, which again made him awe at the beautiful construct he was in. He quickened his pace. Lights began to again throb out of the walls and into his mind. He saw Pin-Pin, maybe 50 feet away. The labyrinth had spit them out on a parallel to a long causeway. The angle of the light beam above him, high up the wall, signified more roots higher up. He just needed to move forward and then get around. Then he could make his way out. The only way was on to the next one. He pelted forward down the causeway. The pain did not subside. Time seemed to slow down. It felt now like he was flying, for he could not feel his body. Had drugs kicked in? He was running on pure, autonomous motion. He could feel the end of the tunnel. He could feel what lay at the end, and he could feel tears trembling upward back into his eyes. The feeling of freedom took over him in a way he didn't want to explain. Still, his legs went on. The pain continued, but it didn't matter. His body didn't matter. Just the knowledge he could feel coming. The love, the warmth, the pain. It was all coming back to him. The lights began dimming again. He opened his eyes to see, but the tears were too much for him to see. His mind was too big to think about just him in this one place. His legs were too strong to give up. Then, as the lights came on, he had one last thought of Pin-Pin, and his whole being tumbled down the dozen yards of the causeway. His whole body flopped and slipped the last few yards until he landed at the place where he had last saw Pin-Pin. As the pain dissipated and left as quickly as it came, he began to feel as warm as he had been next to the fire. Yet he knew there was no burning flame. He had lost a lot of blood from the kangaroo kick to the head. It was hard to decipher why he he felt like he did. He came to a halt on the floor. Silence. He turned his back as he lay there. His back was being toasted by the heat source. What was warming him? He lazily looked through one eye. It was a crown of a crystal type, about the same size as his head, he thought to himself, just lying there, unknowing. The lights within reflected from the glowing sapphire tunnel he had just come from. Unlike before, there was no pain accompanying it. He half smiled at the crystal as they both lay there in the dirt. Gazing into the many crystals that grew from the crown, his face began to glow. He looked at his hands to see. The lights, all of the lights, pretty as they were, the crown emanated something that felt he had to touch. The black one. Another was neon red that reminded him of the higher room where Nip-Nip hopefully still was. He decided to sit up and look around the room to see what was going on. Yet again, he was in a place larger than the last. He stood up and turned around, being careful not to touch the crown. He didn't want to talk to whoever was on the other end, especially since they said he was not royal anyway. Almost instantly, his thoughts stopped, and he did all he could to just breathe. It was not a room he was in. The floor was like a neon frozen sea, as smooth as ice. His eyes were not in sync with his feet or the floor. In the distance, a city could be seen. He was underground. As far as he could see, all along the landscape, there were lights emitting from what looked like windows. Cube, circle, and triangle holes cut into the rock, which all emanated lights of different types. Maybe it was a wall. It was like an underground city. Surely it went up all the way back to the surface. To his feet, it was warm. Still, he missed bedrock that danced with sunlight each day between his feet. Between him and the ancient place that he had no deep desire to traverse. Into some underground labyrinth without Nip-Nip? Or was it now Pin-Pin? He felt strange. The things he thought of could lead anywhere, yet he knew the memories he had. Maybe in his head, he could find a way out of this place. He looked to his left and right, as if to prepare himself physically for an onslaught of something unmanifested. He turned and faced left. He looked up and he found the ceiling was perfectly smooth with no exits. He looked around. He thought to himself, this place is so big that I feel like an ant or a fly inside a didgeridoo. Then he remembered the story of the didgeridoo that would be played by a merryman who could drink all the waters of the earth. He lay inside the digi like a small fly. He turned around to see that the didgeridoo of a merryman continued as far as the eye could see until the horizon could not be seen anymore. The city, with its colorful entrances and outer wall, all of its structure was entirely geometric in design. Juts signaling obelisks could be seen. He looked away as if to assure himself he was alone. He thought to himself, who would be in there? Only familiars or potential summons. With every moment, his mind seemed to acquire new memory that seemed to have always been there, waiting, here, in this place, for him.